Blitz Esports releases new videos every week. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss out.
Hey guys, welcome to the new Blitz Meta Report, where we break down the latest league trends in just a couple of minutes. This week, the focus is Lee Sin, and some math behind his reworked Q. Lee Sin's base damage on both parts of his Q were lowered, but the attack damage ratio went up. It also no longer does 8% of a target's missing health as damage, but it now has a new effect that adds up to double damage based on the target's missing health. So after all that, is this a buff or a nerf? Riot Meddler recently said that this was supposed to be a slight buff, but ended up being a bit of a nerf. To figure out what that means, and really understand the changes, we tested multiple scenarios of Lee Sin's Q with different builds and targets, from squishy to tank. The changes to the first part of Q are definitely nerfs. The AD ratio buff doesn't compensate for the base damage lost in most situations, but it does perform better in some situations. Let's go through the results. For a full breakdown on Lee Sin's stats and playstyle, you can check out the Blitz desktop app here, also linked in the description. We have it updated with the latest builds and guides for every champion, and now we've also made it the best way to play League with friends. Create a clan on the Blitz app and add your friends to track your group match history, run champion pool analysis, and see collective ranked stats. In the early game, Lee Sin is nerfed in most situations. You haven't started stacking much AD, and if fights aren't prolonged, you aren't getting bonus damage on low HP targets. At level 3, Lee Sin does less damage than what he would do on 8.14 versus any of the targets. And at level 6, with some AD, it's only a buff if the target is missing a lot of health, and even then, it's barely noticeable. Going into mid-game is where the change turns into a buff, especially for aggressive Lee Sin players that are snowballing. You'll be doing less damage to targets that are close to full, but once they start missing more health, the change starts to show as a buff. At level 9, we can see that at 50% health, he does more damage from a Sonic Wave plus Resonating Strike combo to all his targets currently than he would before. And once you start getting into higher missing health thresholds, it's even more noticeable. As you continue going into mid-game and later stages, this change will benefit players that are ahead and want to keep building AD. Builds with Warrior, Youmuu's Ghostblade, and Black Cleaver will seriously pack a punch. If you're going for the more defensive builds, where your only offensive items are Warrior and Black Cleaver, it should still be a noticeable buff to squishier targets like ADCs and non-health stacking mages, once they're missing 40 to 50% of their health. And finally, Smite Securing, which is all around nerfed. Dragon, Baron, and Elder have high base health, and usually a Lee Sin wants to use Q to help secure. A 20-minute Baron has 12,900 health. When missing 90% health, the old 8% damage ratio meant that Q could do over 500 damage to combo with Smite. Now, he'll be doing about 223 damage in the same situation. Big jungle monsters have a lot of health, especially blue, red, and Grom. So without the old execute damage, and with his new lower base damage, Lee Sin's clear will be a bit slower than it was before. Overall, Lee Sin's damage versus champions was buffed in the mid-game, and the change is especially noticeable in heavy AD builds. His damage early game is hurting a bit, but since Riot said they're looking to buff him again for 8.17, he might end up even stronger. For more stats and tips on Lee Sin and other champions, get the Blitz desktop app here.